So in the last class we were talking about HTTP protocol. We saw HTTP protocol defines the standard for the client and server to interact with each other. So we have gone through HTTP request and response formats. We've gone through request and response formats. HTTP request and HTTP response formats. So we saw that HTTP request format is divided into three parts, and response format is also divided into three parts. What are the three different parts of HTTP request? What is the first one? So you'll have request line, yes, headers, and message body. And just a second, just a second. Fine. So request line, we saw that in the request line we got HTTP method details, URI, sorry, and the protocol and version details. And we have gone through the HTTP methods, especially why these HTTP methods are used by the client. So that is what we'll be discussing today. Can you people tell me, so why do we use HTTP methods? Yes. HTTP method, not we in the sense the client. So why it uses HTTP methods? So in the last class I did mention about it. So HTTP method, it is used by the client not a particular database always, it depends. I can say that HTTP request, it is used to specify what sorry, HTTP method, I'm sorry, HTTP method, it is used to specify what type of request the client is placing. HTTP method is used to specify what type of request the client is placing. We saw that like we had 7 HTTP methods: get, post, put, delete. What else we got? Head, options, entries. So these are 7 HTTP methods. Each HTTP method here, it specifies what type of request the client is placing. It is used to specify what type of request the client is placing. For example, the client uses get method if it wants to fetch a resource. Okay, the client using this get method, basically it will request a server to provide a resource. To fetch a resource from the server, it uses get method. Okay, similarly, you'll find that we got post method, which is also used for the same purpose. Okay, post method is also used for the same purpose to fetch the resource. Then what is the difference between get and post? That I'm going to demonstrate here. Okay, just a second. Yeah, sorry. So now let's see what is the difference between HTTP method get and post. Basically, both the methods are used for the same purpose to fetch the resource from the server. Okay, yes. But there is a difference here. That difference we'll try to understand. Sorry. For this, I'll consider this login page. Just a second, please. Just a second. Yeah, sorry. So, generally, here, when we submit this form, we got this login form, right? So when we submit this form, what happens? So you will find that the browser or the browser here or the client will read this form data. Will type in some form data and will submit the form. So it will once we are done typing in the data, we'll submit the form, right? So when we submit the form, the browser will read all this form data. Okay, and you know what it does here? It will send the request to the server. It will send the request to the server. Now the question is here, the browser, it uses which HTTP method to place the request? You got any idea about it? Browser, it uses which HTTP method to place the request? Yes? Yep, that's right. You know what? By default, by default, always the client, I can say, client or browser means the same, okay? Always, you'll find that your client, it uses HTTP method get by default. So the default HTTP method which is used by the client is get, okay? Provided if we don't specify any details, okay? If you don't provide any HTTP method details, by default, the browser uses HTTP method get, okay? Yes. So how to specify the method details, I'll tell you people, okay? But now let's do this. So we'll deploy this application on the server. Okay. Now I'll try to access that login page. Sorry. And I'll submit this form. Okay. Before that, I want you people to check this address, the URL in the address bar. Yes, all of you, just check this URL in the address bar. So what is the URL in the address bar? It says first web approach login.html. Okay. Yes. Right. So it refers to the login page here. Yes. Now I'll submit this form. Let's see what happens. I'll click on login. Okay. So when I click on login, have you noticed it? In the browser, the URL has changed. Now this URL, see login process means that is the action value which we have specified in the form. And then followed by that you have this username and password. So do you see any issue with this URL? Do you see any issue with this URL? So input data is displayed here. Okay. Especially, have you noticed it? That password is very much visible, right? The password is very much visible. Yes. So this is a security concern. Okay. Yes. So how do we address this issue? Actually, you know, what happens is whenever the client uses HTTP method GET to place the request on the server, you'll find that to send this form data, the client will not use message body. Okay, all of you listen to me carefully. So whenever the client places a request here, when this form is submitted, the client will place a request, right? So you'll find that the client will not use message body. When we talk about the HTTP request, it is divided into three parts, right? The, the client will not use message body to send this uh, message form data or that input data. Won't use message body. So then how it will send this form data to the server? So it will append it to the request line. What it does? It will append it to the request line. Yeah. So when the form data, if it when it is appended to the request line, this is what happens. The form data is very much visible in the address bar. The form data is very much visible in the address bar. Yes. So how to handle this issue now? So whenever you got some secure data, if you want to send some secure data like passwords and all, so we should not use get. It means the client should not use get. The client is not supposed to use get. So let's do one thing. We'll ask the client to use post method. Okay. We'll ask the client to use HTTP method post. Okay. Yes. How will you specify that? You see, we got method attribute. We can just mention it as post. Okay. So now what happens? Now we are asking the client to use HTTP method get, okay, to place the request. We are asking the client to use HTTP method get to place the request. Sorry, HTTP method post to place the request. Okay. Yes. So post. What happens if the client uses post method? So if the client uses post method, then the client what it does is it uses message body to send that form data. It uses message body to send the form data. Yes. And you know what here? If the client uses message body to send that form data or input data to the server, then that input data will not be visible in the address bar. That input data will not be visible in the address bar. Okay, let's see this time. So when you submit the form here, this time, okay, the request will be placed. Now, which client is going to handle this request? Sorry, which servlet will handle the request here? See, the servlet whose URL is login process. So this time the client is going to use HTTP method post to place a request. That servlet whose URL is login process, okay, will be handling it. But I don't want that login servlet to handle that request. I want the sample servlet to process the request. Okay, I want this request to be handled by sample servlet. So then what changes we are supposed to make here? What changes are we supposed to make here? Yes. Okay, first of all, okay, that's right, I do agree, but here in the form, do we need to make any changes? If you want that sample servlet to handle the request, in the form, are we supposed to make any changes? Change the action URL. Okay, now we need to link this form to that sample servlet. We need to link this form to the sample servlet. So you have to configure the URL of that servlet. Sorry, sample serv. That's it. Okay. So fine. Now the sample servlet, will it be able to handle post request here? Sample servlet, is it capable of handling post request? What do you people think? So I can say no. Okay. So as of now, this servlet can only handle a get request because we are only overriding the do get method here. Okay. In the servlet, if you got do get method, then it indicates that this servlet can only handle get request. That's it. What if a client places a post request, HTTP method post request, then what happens? Then we'll get an error. Let's see. So I'll deploy this application on the server. Let's try to deploy this application on the server. And I'll place that login request. I'll click on login. Oops, I'm sorry. Okay, the changes not have been, they are not updated here. Just a minute. Refresh the page. Always refresh the page after making the changes. Okay. Sorry. Yes. Now when we submit the form, you can check that URL in the address bar. So it is referring to that sample servlet itself. The URL basically it is referring to that sample servlet, I can say. So now this is the error which I was expecting. HTTP status 405. So it said this is the response code, I can say. What is it? Response code. Status code. In the last class, we were talking about status codes, right? 405 is a status code, which indicates now what exactly happened to this request. So it says HTTP method post is not supported by this URL. It says this URL doesn't support that method post. HTTP method post, it's not supported. That is what it says. Okay, because in the servlet, the do post method is not overridden. This is HTTP servlet. Okay, if you want this servlet to handle post request, then you have to override do post method. Change this method name to do post. Yes. Now I can say that this servlet is capable of handling the post request here. For every HTTP method, you got an appropriate do method. I was listing down those methods in the last class, right? Yes. So now let's test this code this time. Okay. So I'll type in the data here and we'll submit this form. You see, the sample servlet is invoked. In the address bar, you will not see that form data. It is not visible now. So in the address bar, even the form data is not visible. Okay. So that is the difference between get and post. So what is the difference? Can you people tell me? What difference did we found here? Now, yes. What is the difference we found? Yes. You see, if you use HTTP method get, if you use HTTP method get, sorry. So the default method is get. You see, if you don't specify any method details, it will be get. In this case, if you submit this form, in this case, if you submit this form, so you will find that the browser or this client here it will construct a HTTP request. It will add that form data or it will append that form data to the request line itself. When the client uses HTTP method get, it appends the form data to the request line itself and it will send it to the server. So it will not use message body. The client will not use message body for HTTP method get. So whenever the client is placing the request using HTTP method get, it will not use message body. Okay, please remember. Yes. Okay, and the client, if it is not using HTTP method, sorry, if it is not using message body to send that form data to the server, then the data will be displayed in the address bar. That is what you can notice. Okay, as I told you people, so it won't use message body, so it will append that form data or input data to the request line itself. So the data is very much visible. You see, if I click on login, you see, you will find that in the address bar you have the password, URL and passwords. Okay, yes, hope you people got it. And you see, I want the client to use method post. So in this case, what happens? The client will use message body to send the form data to the server. The client uses message body to send the form data to the server. And if the data is added to the message body, then I can say that the data is very much visible in the address bar. The data is very much visible in the address bar. Yes. Okay. Yes. So now this time we'll find the difference. It uses message body, so the data will not be visible in the address bar. Okay. Let's click on this login. You see, the request is placed. So in the address bar, you won't find that form data. The form data is not visible in the address bar. Okay. So is it clear for you people, all of you? That is the main difference between get and post. Any questions? Okay. And you know, there is one more difference I can say. When the browser uses get method, as I told you before, that the input data is passed on uh, by appending it to the request line. The input data will be appended to the request line. And when the data is appended to the request line, you will find that that request line, it can't take huge volumes of data. Okay, so there is a restriction for that. The amount of data which you can send through that request line is very much limited, is very much confined. Okay, yes. So that is one of the restrictions. You can send up to 256 characters or so, that's it, using the request line. So at most you can send 256 characters or so, that's it. So Next, when we talk about the post method, you know that the client uses the message body to send the form data, right? And when the client uses message body to send the form data, you see that message body, through the message body, you can send you know, unlimited amount of data. So there is no restriction for the amount of data which you can send through or through that message body. Okay, yes, you can send unlimited amount of data through that message body. That is possible. So that is the difference. Okay, so now let's move on. Let's move on. I'll talk about the other methods here. What are the other methods which you got? Put method is there. So this put method, what it does, put method is used to add a resource on the server. Sorry. So put method is used to add a resource on the server. Okay. So whenever you want to add a resource on the server, you can use put method. Yes. Next, we got actually, okay, I said it is used to add a resource, right? So can you people give me some examples of adding a resource? When I say adding a resource, any example for that? Sorry. You see, uploading a file, uploading any file, any image, uploading some documents. See, when I'll be uploading the records, right, to the Dropbox. Dropbox is also a web application. So this way, uploading some content here. So basically, it is nothing but your add, it is nothing but adding a resource itself. Yes, fine. Next, we got delete method. So delete method, quite opposite to put method. Put method is used to add a resource. Now delete method to delete a resource. Okay. So using the delete method, the client can place a request to delete a resource from the server. Okay, so if the client wants the server to delete a resource, so it can use HTTP method delete here. Okay, yes, it can use that method delete. Yes, fine. Next, we got head method. So this head method is similar to your get method. Head method is similar to get method. Using head method, the client can place a request on the server to provide the details about the resource. You know, the client, what it does is here, through the head method, it can request the server to provide the details about the resource. Yes, to get the details about the resource or to obtain the details about the resource, the client can use get method. Yes, sorry, head method. Only details about the resource, not the detail, not the resource. Okay, the client wants only the details about the resource from the server. Details about the resource from the server. So it can use head method. When I say details about the resource, what exactly it includes? What do people think? Resource details means the size of the resource, whether that resource is existing or not, when exactly this resource was last modified, when exactly this particular resource was last modified. Okay, so such details the client will obtain from the server, I can say. So why it needs the details? Why the client needs the details about the resource? Yes, how the client will use this resource details, especially see when this resource was last modified, whether the resource is existing or not. So such details the client will obtain from the server. I can say that the client can use this details especially when it is caching the resource, caching for caching purpose. Sorry. So what is caching? Yes. Any idea about caching?
Caching is nothing but we just cache the data from a server. Once the data is fetched from the server, it can be stored into any temporary location. So whenever the request is made for that data, then the data will be fetched from the cache memory like that.
Okay, good. Yeah. You know, normally whatever the resources or data which you're fetching, it is residing on the server. So client will be placing the request for a. You'll find that here every time the user uh, places a request for any resource here, you see the client has to fetch it from the server every time. The client has to fetch that resource from the server. And each time if the client wants to fetch the resource from the server, it is supposed to construct the request, send the request to the server. On the server side, the server should take that request, should provide that resource to the server, to the client. So it would take considerable amount of time in fetching a resource from the server, I can say. Okay, what happens? It will take considerable amount of time to fetch the resource from the servers. Here, you know, what if the client, after fetching that resource, what if the client here, if it can store that copy of that resource? What if the client can store and maintain that copy of the resource? Okay, so if the client can maintain or store a copy of the resource, then you see, if the user places a request for that resource, now the client need not fetch that resource from the server, so it is residing in this client machine itself. It can simply read that resource and provide that resource to the users. Yes, so you need not worry about connecting to the server, fetching the resource from the server, so and all such things, right? Yeah, so this way the client will be able to fetch the resource quickly. Okay, this way the client can fetch the resource quickly. So client is maintaining a copy of that resource here locally. After fetching that resource, it's going to maintain a copy of that resource. Okay, it will have a copy of that resource in the memory. But there is one issue with this approach. So can you people tell me what is the issue here? You can say there is one issue. What is the issue? With the caching, there is advantage. We can the client can quickly provide us that resource. Okay. But what is the issue? There is a limitation or drawback, I can say. You'll find that the client, let's say it has fetched the resource from the server and it got a copy of that resource. The client got the copy of that resource. What if that resource, if it is modified on the server side? Oh, okay. What if that resource is modified on the server side? We got a copy of that resource. The client is maintaining a copy, of that resource. The original copy is still on the server. What if that resource is modified on the server? Then what? So will there be an issue? Yes, of course. Now the client got a resource which is not up to date, right? Now how the client can find out whether this resource, the only way the client can check whether the resource is updated or not, by placing this head request, I can say. If the client places a head request, so the server will provide the details about when exactly this resource was modified. You see, if the client has cached this resource after that modified date, that means client has got still fresh copy of that resource. Let's say if the client finds that after the client has cached this resource, that resource was original copy of that resource was modified on the server. In that case, the client not having a fresh copy of that resource, so it has to fetch that resource again, right? It has to fetch a fresh copy of that resource again. Yes. So this way the client can use head method to check whether a particular resource is modified on the server. Using the head method, the client can check whether the resource is modified. Okay, because it is caching the resource. So if it finds that the resource is modified on the server, so it can get a fresh copy of that resource here. The client can get a fresh copy of that resource. Yeah. So is it clear for you people? You got this head method. Okay. Next we have options. So before options, I'll talk about trace. Okay. And then I'll talk about options. Sorry. You see, when we talk about trace method, HTTP method trace, you'll find that this method is used by the client when it wants to test the connection. Okay. If the client wants to test the connection, it can use trace method. How the client can use the trace method to test the connection? How the client can use the trace method to test the connection? I can say, in this case, the client, if it wants to test the connection, it can send a trace request to the server. When the server receives a trace request from the client, okay, if at all, if the server receives a trace request from the client, if the server, if it is able to successfully receive the trace request from the client, then server, it echoes back to the client. it will send an echo message back to the client. Okay, so if the client gets the echo message from the server, that means it indicates that the server was able to successfully take that client's request. Server was able to successfully take that client's request, and it is providing, and it has sent a response as well, which is a echo message. That's it. This way it can use trace. Next, we got options. It's the last method. So when the client uses option method, so the client uses option method, options method, to check what methods are supported by the server, which HTTP methods are supported by the server. You know, there is no guarantee that the server is supposed to support all the HTTP methods. Okay, the server, it may or may not support all the HTTP methods. Server, it may or may not support all the HTTP methods here, I can say. So you know what, here the client can use this options method, HTTP method options, to find out which HTTP methods are supported by the server, to find out which HTTP methods are supported by the server. So it can use this options method. So server will respond with list of HTTP methods it supports. That's it. Okay. So now, can we override all these methods, or can we override can we define a servlet which can support all these methods? Okay, can we define a servlet which can support all these methods, HTTP methods? I can say yes, it is possible. We can create a servlet, a HTTP servlet, I can say. We can create a HTTP servlet, it supports, which can support all these methods. So what you're supposed to do is make sure that you override the appropriate methods for this. In the HTTP servlet, for each HTTP method, we got an appropriate method, so which you have supposed to override. Okay, yes, do post. I'm sorry, do put, do head, do trace, do options. That's it. This way, you see, to handle a particular HTTP method request, we got an appropriate method. We got an appropriate method defined in the HTTP servlet class, which we are supposed to override. Okay. Yes. Can we override all these do methods in a single servlet? I can say yes, of course. You can override all these HTTP methods in the servlet. So it is very much possible. So this is about your HTTP methods. Okay. So any questions or doubts in this regard, please let me know. Yeah. No? Okay, fine. So now you people understood this HTTP protocol, and we saw the HTTP methods, and we saw status codes or status lines, right? Fine. Okay. So, and we saw that MIME types as well in the last class. What is this MIME type? MIME type. MIME types. Yes, can you people tell me? What are MIME types? MIME stands for Multimedia Internet Mail Extensions. Yes. Multimedia Internet Mail Extensions. Yes. So you'll find that this is used to specify what type of response the server is sending, right? Yes. So by default, you see, always the MIME type is set to text HTML. If you want, we can explicitly set this MIME type. You know, in the response object, we got a method set content type. Let's say application MS Word. I'll set the content type this way. You see, this method set content type is used to specify that MIME type. MIME type for what? Which represents what type of response the server is sending back to the client. So you are setting it in the response object here. Basically, you're configuring this MIME type details in the response object. Yes. Okay. So application MS Word means, any idea? So application MS Word means it indicates that the server is sending some response, which is a Word document response. It indicates that this is actually a Word document response. Okay, that means the content type is Word document type. Now when this response is sent back to the client how it is going to render this response, client how it renders this response. So the client will use HTTP. Sorry, the client will use the Word application, MS Word application. Client will use MS Word application to render this response. Okay, client uses MS Word application to render this response. Let's see. So let's place a request login.html. You got this login page. We'll click on login. Yes. See now, so this is what you'll see. You'll find a page. It says it is a document type dot document. So click on open. You can save it or open it. If I click on open, let's see what happens. Yes. So you got this content displayed in the MS Word document. So this is an MS Word document, right? Yes. It's a Word document. The application is Word document application. Yes. Because we have specified that the content type is a Word document content type, so it uses that Word document to render that response. Yeah. So is it clear for you people? This way you see always the browser, what it does is it uses an appropriate application to render that response which it receives from the server. Yeah. So this is about your protocol. Now let me talk about redirecting. So in HTTP we have this option of redirecting the request. Sorry, redirections or redirecting the request. So have you people heard about redirections? Redirecting a request. Redirecting the request. Sorry. You might have noticed it while browsing the net through the web or internet. You see redirections happening. Yeah. So when you place a request for one page, you'll be taken to some other page. Okay. When you place a request for one page, you'll be taken to another page here. That is redirections. And especially when you will see that redirections, can you people tell me in what cases you found that redirection? When you have noticed that redirections, you know, especially in case of payment gateways. So when you're making some payment, you'll find that you'll be taken from that. Let's say, for suppose you want to make some payment in online shopping site. You're trying to make a payment in online shopping site. So for suppose if you have selected that net banking option to make the payment, so from that online shopping site, so you'll be taken to that bank application page where you have to log in, provide your credentials, and make the payment through your account. You have to confirm it after logging in. So from the online shop, you'll be taken to that bank application, bank site, where you will provide that credentials, login details, and all related to the account. Then you'll confirm that payment here. Yes, that confirm that amount and all. So this is one of the examples of redirections. So generally, how will you redirect the request? I'm sorry. So I'll comment all this code. You can use this send redirect method. Send redirect method. So in the send redirect method, you can specify the URL. So in which class the send redirect is defined? So in the HTTP servlet, where you'll find the send redirect method. HTTP servlet only, not in servlet HTTP servlet response. You see this send redirect method in HTTP servlet response. Again, you will not find this method in servlet response. In the servlet response, you will not find this method. Only in HTTP servlet response, you should see this method. Yes. Okay. Yes. So now whenever we place a request here for the sample servlet, we in the sense the client, when the client places a request for the sample servlet, what happens? You'll find that the request will be, okay, what happens? Can you people tell me? When we place a request for sample servlet, then what happens? So this request, sample servlet will take that request, and in turn, you know, it will ask the client, it will send a response to the client here, asking the client to place a fresh request for that register HTML page. You know, what happens here is this time the client, when it takes that request, sorry, when the client places a request for the sample servlet will take that request no doubt, and after that the sample servlet will send a response back to the client asking the client to place a fresh request for that register page, HTML page. It will ask the client to place a fresh request for that particular register page. That's it. And this is how redirection works. Okay. Yeah. The client will take that request, and the servlet will take that request, and in turn, the servlet will ask the client to place a fresh request for that page register servlet. Okay. So let me just show you people once how it looks like. Okay. Now what I'll do is here, I'll place a request for the sample servlet. So you say I'm typing in the URL of that servlet here, and I'll place the request. Oh, sorry. And you know one important thing. You see, when I place the request, it says HTTP method get is not supported by this URL. What does that mean? Can you people tell me? It says HTTP method get is not supported by this URL. So what does that mean? It indicates that here the client is actually, you see, when we are typing in that URL of the servlet, so the client is placing HTTP method get request. The client is placing HTTP method get request. And when the client places HTTP method get request, okay, when the client places HTTP method get request, so there should be an appropriate method in the servlet to handle this request. There should be an appropriate method in the servlet to handle this request. So in the servlet, which method is there? Do post. So let me just change it to do get. That's it. Make it do get. Okay, this time let's place a request sample serve. You see, I've typed in the URL sample serve, but what you can see here, you'll find that the register page is invoked here. You'll find that the register page is invoked. Okay, so can I have yes or no? Is it clear? Okay, good. Now, the next topic which we need to talk about here is JSPs. Okay, JSPs, Java Server Pages. But I will do it in the next class. Okay, yes, Java Server Pages. So we'll meet tomorrow at our regular time, and we'll talk about Java Server Pages. Okay, and please make a note of it. Saturday evening at the rate 6 p.m. Central Time, you'll have a special class. Okay, Saturday morning there is a class. It will be for 2 3 hours. Up, I'll see because I'm conducting it on Saturday evening. So in Saturday morning class, I'll be talking about the JSpace, and Saturday evening class will be a special class on struts. Okay, yes. So JSPs, I'll give you fair enough knowledge of JSPs, which will help you people to understand the struts. Again, coming weekdays, we'll talk about a few more things in JSPs. Few topics will be left over in JSPs. I'll tell you how it works. So Saturday evening, 6 p.m. Central Time, there will be a class. Again, Sunday morning also we'll have a class. Yes. Don't worry. By the end of the training, you'll get it. Okay. Yes. Saturday Sunday morning, you'll have a class again. Yeah. So come on, yeah. First, what I'm talking, just listen to me. So we are not leaving anything, and we are not wasting time. Yes. So we got a busy schedule this weekend. Concentrate on that first of all. Yes. Okay. So this will be your schedule this weekend. Saturday morning, as usual, you'll have the class, but these are two special classes for struts, Saturday and Sunday. Okay. Yes. Fine. So please make a note of the schedule. Okay, fine. So So let's meet tomorrow and we'll continue our discussion. Okay. Yeah. So thank you all. Bye bye.